Senator. When I was a boy, I mean, I still live in the very same place, but when I was a boy, 1 block from my house, to the left of our house, was the electric trolley that went into Boston from Malden all day, every day. We didn't have air conditioning, so especially in the summer, it was like the sounds of the night, just hearing those trolleys go in and out. Electric trolleys, by the way. We already invented the future and then tore it down and had diesel buses instead take people into Boston from Malden. And on 3 blocks the other side of my house were the railroad tracks for the freight and the commuter rail to go from Boston to Lawrence and beyond all day long, every single day. So the sound of trains on both sides of my house were pretty much the sounds of trains. At night, just so many nights I would just go to sleep listening to those trolley cars. So I think everyone has a train story in their life. It was a big part of my life, that's for sure. And the question really is, how quickly can we move to this new era? So I think what I heard was that the industry invests $23 billion a year in infrastructure. I think that's what I heard you say, Mr. Jeffries. And you're proud of that. So that would be, $230 billion of investment over a 10-year period. And that the new locomotive engines cost $4 million, not billion, $4 million, out of $230 billion investment over a 10-year period. And that's investment that you're already making. So a reprioritization, would clearly get a big payoff in terms of reduced emissions and kind of this transition to the new technology. So that's what's kind of hard to understand, that the funding is clearly there. And so I guess when I just look at that very simple arithmetic, it's not calculus, it's not trigonometry, it's just $4 million for an engine and $230 billion that you are going to invest otherwise. And what percentage of that could be dedicated, to this new mission? So, Mr. Rosen, again, why doesn't the railway industry want to make this transition? What's their problem?
Well, and I will add another piece of simple math I've just done in my head while sitting here, having heard earlier that the lifespan of a locomotive is up to 40 years. That means 2.5% of the fleet has to be replaced every year. There's, been 8 years since the new standard.
Good point.
8 years times 2.5 is 20% right there.
Right there.
And what they've been doing is upgrading very old locomotives, which allow them to keep them at much lower standards, as you heard Ms. Torres explain, rather than moving to the newer ones. And it's a simple reason. It's greed. It's a little cheaper, at least in the short run, at least in what they can show on their quarterly statements, than buying the new locomotives, which will actually make a real difference in people's lives in this country, and will for a long time to come.
Yeah, so according to I don't even call it math, it's just arithmetic. The industry makes about $20 million a day in net profit, $20 million a day. So if you just took 1 day's, that's 5 new trains, 5 new electric engines. Take 2 days, you get 10. That's not, is that asking for too much out of the profit of an industry that they move in that direction? But what you're saying is it's not kind of benign neglect that Senator Moynihan used to talk about here when he was in the Senate. This is more designed neglect, right? They actually have a plan not to do this, not to upgrade, even though the technology is there, even though the rest of the world is moving rapidly, technologically in all fronts, but the railway industry is stuck back in this ancient era. And I love the sounds of the trains, from my youth, but I can't believe that those same trains are still running on the tracks, and that every, like 2.5% a year have to get replaced, and they're saying we're not going to replace them. So again, you just come back, I guess it's their profit motive. Is that all it is, Mr. Rosen?
I believe the railroads are in business to make profit, not to move transport. They move transport in order to make profit. And this is a fundamental issue. It is the way our economy is structured. If we're going to have an economy structured that way, the government has to intercede in order to make sure they do what's needed by the greater society, because they are not structured to worry about the society.
Yeah, and the society, of course, does suffer. Okay, we know that there are higher asthmas, cancers, the closer you are to anything that's emitting these greenhouse gases. So a fact sheet published by the Association of American Railroads states that the cost of converting half of the existing locomotive fleet to catenary rail would be $100 billion. But Martin Olbermann, who is the chair of the Surface Transportation Board, in a speech to the North American Rail Shippers Association in 2021, said Class 1 railroads have taken home an astounding $183 billion in buybacks and dividends since 2010. And that's money not spent on safety, not spent on workers, not seen as cost savings to consumers. That's just money that goes back to the shareholders. So again, Mr. Rosen, why can't that money be used to invest in electrification? And then I'll ask you, Mr. Jeffries, why can't a certain percentage of that money be used for electrification? Mr. Rosen.
We would certainly say that it not only can it be, it should be. If the railroads want to maintain themselves as private profit-making businesses, then they've got to get a lot more responsible and have to stop standing in the way of what the society needs. If not, maybe we do need to look at the alternatives that have developed in many other countries where, because it's long-term investments involved, it's been decided, it's going to have to be done on a national basis, and there's been nationalization of the railroads and other industries. I don't think that's what the railroads want to see, but if they don't start acting responsibly, I think it's what the people of this country are going to demand.
Yeah, and again, Mr. Jeffries, I have a nostalgia for the past, but at a certain point in time, it has to be replaced with a vision for the future. And that vision has to be articulated by every American industry, knowing how serious climate change is and what the response is going to be, especially if there are non-greenhouse gas emitting engines that are available and can be manufactured. And so I guess my question to you is, that's a lot of dough, that's a lot of dividends. And so from, my perspective, why can't that money be used to invest in electrification, Mr. Jeffries?
So I'd like to go back to the beginning. It's averaged $25 billion a year in private investment. So you're right, over 10 years, $250 billion. And the result of that is the nation's highest rated infrastructure of any type. And if my colleague wants to nationalize the rail network, I would just say take a look at the American Society of Civil Engineers grades of publicly owned infrastructure, which pales in comparison to the grade it gives the nation's freight railroads. Also, 40%.
I don't want to get into a debate about nationalization. I want to get into a debate about why can't a much higher percentage of that $250 billion go over to $4 million locomotives that are all electric? Why can't that happen? Why can't the industry just say, we're going to make a commitment to doing that because we want to play our fair share
Sure thing.
in reducing the danger that greenhouse gases play, and especially the other emissions that go into the neighborhoods where the trains go by.
So 40% of long-haul freight, less than 2% of transportation-related emissions. Again, we're not saying that's good enough. There's more work to do. That's why I have railroads investing over $1 billion in new locomotive technology. That's why we are deploying and exercising battery electric out in revenue service. That's why we're putting battery electric switcher locomotives in yards. That's why we're using zero-emission cranes. Is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. Even if we could flip a switch, the production capacity is not there. So to suggest that there's some sort of willful negligence, I think is frankly irresponsible when you look at the environmental profile of the industry and the investments that are made compared to practically every other industry as a percentage of revenue.
Well,
I think, to be clear, I think we all have the same goals here.
I'm just saying is that every other industry is moving and they can articulate the plan, and electric has to be our future. And by the way, electric is the industry's past. So it's not like you don't know how to do this if you wanted to do it. It's just that, you're kind of stuck in neutral on this.
Every one of my railroads has emissions reductions initiatives, science-based targets initiatives, including net zero emissions within the coming decades. So the commitment is there, the effort is there.
Yeah, but the commitment to electric trains is not there, and that is the future. It will be the future of the world, and we have the workers ready to make them right now, and the engines are there, ready to be.
I think we would
ready to be
respectfully say
constructed.
that it needs to be a multi-pronged approach.
Well, I get it. We don't want to take out your other prongs. We just want you to add this prong. We don't know why you're taking out the electric prong.
I think our testimony reflects that it's absolutely part of the strategy. Maybe we're not buying, the
No, you're not.
more than you would like. The production capacity's got to be there. It's got to make sense. It's got to work. It's got to move freight. We've got to be able to serve customers. We've got to be able to serve communities.
It's just a technologically retrograde industry, okay? It's not moving to the future of technology, and you're doing okay, but that's not what this era calls for. The ocean off of Miami Beach is 100 degrees right now.
We should be moving more by freight rail.
Canada is on fire. Greece is on fire. It's been above 110 degrees in Phoenix for the last 4 weeks, and everyone else is paying attention to it. We just want the board of directors of your association to pay attention to it too and say, let's go back to the table. Let's just look at these engines. They're there. Workers are ready to go. Technology's ready to go. And we're just going to up our share of commitment to it. And you just seem to be saying, no, we're not going to. Hell no,
That's
we're not going.
absolutely not what I'm saying, and the commitment is there, and we
The
should be
commitment
working
to
together on this.
the commitment to a much higher share of all electric of trains? Is that what you're saying? The commitment is there for
I'm
that?
saying, look at the investments, read my
No,
testimony.
you're not,
and-
you're not saying that. You're not saying, you're saying that we have a multi-pronged approach to avoid the central question of this era, which is electric. Are we moving there? Are we going to do it? And here, it's no big, it's not like we're waiting for Elon Musk to show up. It's already there. They're ready to go. It's an existing technology. Senator from Wyoming, I apologize for going.